Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the UCM podcast. I'm Dr. Bill Davis, and I am very excited to be joined today by our guest, Dr. Barbara Reed from Ames, Iowa. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Reed.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Very excited to have you on the podcast. You and I have known each other a long time and never had you on the podcast. And so I'm so excited to have you today. And, for anybody out there that doesn't know you, Barb, please, share a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. I started off in NUCCA in a little unique kind of way. I didn't study it in school. Anyone who's taken my class has heard this story, but I didn't take it at Palmer. I took AO, but I was looking for an associateship so I could learn the business part of things. And there was this legendary doctor in Chicago that was looking for somebody. And I thought, hey, I'll meet the guy. There's no way he's going to hire me. Right. So I interviewed with Dr. DeColt Sr. in Chicago, and he was willing to hire me. I remember distinctly sitting down to lunch after watching him, like he was 74 and he was just bebopping around the office. And I was amazed at what I was seeing. I was amazed at the post films that I was seeing. I hadn't seen anything like that before. And sat down to lunch with him and his beautiful wife, Marianne. And he was like, well, honey, if you're willing to learn it, I'm willing to teach you. And so he brought me in. I made him zero money for like 3 months because he had to teach me how to adjust with NUCCA. And so I was grateful that he took a risk with me. I was able to take some x-rays, but even that was a big learning curve. If anyone's ever met Dr. DeColt Sr., we have this, he just had this passion that was so contagious. And I was really grateful to be able to catch that. So anyway, that was my journey there. I started with NUCCA in a very different way and learned it in a very different way. But he also had me start teaching with him too right away. Like he had me assist him with teaching. And so I started in teaching the Palmer elective back in like the late 90s, early 2000s. I was helping him out. And now I teach that still. I still go down there and help teach the NUCCA elective, and I love it. And I also help teach at the conferences. I'm on the NUCCA board. But probably my most important job is I'm a mom of 4 children, and I have a great husband. And so we have a beautiful life right now in Ames, Iowa. And just helping lots of people get well.
Nice. So, I'd love to talk through some of your journey with you. And, starting out, obviously, as an associate with Dr. DeColt Sr., Marshall DeColt Sr., if you're a student or you're new in chiropractic, he is an absolute legend when it comes to upper cervical chiropractic and NUCCA specifically, but really just all of chiropractic. His work with the blood pressure study, which is one of the most important pieces of research in the history of chiropractic. He made a profound impact. His legacy continues on. And so, but when you're in his practice and you're learning those first few years, you did an associate position with him for several years, right? So
5. Yeah, I was with him for 5. I worked as his associate for 3 and then just kept my own practice rocking in his walls for another 2.
As an independent contractor for a few years. Is that right?
Yeah, I guess it would be considered that. I paid him rent, which was
gotcha. Yeah. So, talk about that experience, those years working with him before you moved to Ames.
Yeah, they were something else. I felt like, God gave me a lot of skills being the youngest of 8 children to kind of put up with a lot of stuff. And so, so my skin was pretty thick. And I say that lovingly because his goal was always for excellence in practice. And that's my goal too. We try to make that part of our culture within my practice. That certification just is one of those things we strive for. And it was almost annoying to me, but he would tell every patient, it seemed, that there was only 17 at the time, only 17 board certified doctors, and 3 of them were him and his 2 children. And so I met this little peon like, associate trying to be like, yeah, okay, but trust me too,
Yeah.
and but he was very generous with his time with me,
Mm.
very generous. And it wasn't warm and cuddly. It wasn't like, hey, let's be friends. It was like, you got to learn this for the good of your patients. And
Mm.
there's no gray area here. Like, and so for like the first year, and it wasn't so much him asking me to do this, but it was, well, it might have been a little implied, but it was also like I wanted this feedback. I showed him every single pre-post that I took the first year or two. It was like always, that was part of my routine. I would take care of a patient and I'd set up a time with him to go through pre and post. And I learned a ton. Like you learn a lot of biomechanics. It was a beautiful opportunity to learn this work. Did I end up in tears sometimes? Absolutely. But
Yeah.
but I feel like I'm so blessed to be able to have that experience. And I have just so much gratitude to him and his family for kind of welcoming me into their family.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. And
Yeah.
then in that time though, then I started to branch off into my own practice, and then he brought in other associates. Now, his practice was really exclusively medical doctor referrals. He
Mm.
had a steady stream of patients from a medical doctor in Barrington. It's the one that helped him with that blood pressure study, Dr.
Right.
Bell.
Right.
And then, so any like spillover referrals were given to me, which was a big gift. But also, I didn't learn how to market very well.
Mm.
And so all of a sudden here comes J.R. Barone into the practice as the associate that would take over my spot. And he was amazing. And so what he was learning and what he was doing and getting out there and doing screenings and all this stuff, it was all new to me and it was scary to me. But it was
Mm.
at the same time, it was this really great challenge. And so I'm always grateful to him to kind of opening the door to that for me. So that led to, different coaches and things like that. As you know, I'm sure you do, coaching, finding a good coach within an upper cervical practice is a challenge. So I'm really grateful to what you were doing, Bill, to like make it unique, that it needs to be unique. We are unique practices.
That's
And
right.
it doesn't fit into a model of everything. So I had a stream of coaches that were good for some things, not so good for others. And it was sometimes frustrating, sometimes not. But anyway, fast forward, I got married. We wanted to have kids, but we didn't want to do it in Chicago. So we moved to Ames, Iowa to get closer to our families. And it was spring, fall of 2003. I was all set. I had my building, the walls going up. I had my x-ray equipment getting loaded in. And about a month before opening, I have a positive pregnancy test. And so my husband was working, which was good, but it was one of those like, okay, Lord, I don't know what you're doing here, but okay.
Right.
And so the coach that I had at the time, he was like, I don't think you should open.
Mm.
And I was like, that's not an option.
Wow.
I have to open. And if you can't do that for me, if you can't help me do that, then I have to let you go. I can't be your client anymore if you don't think what I'm doing is going to work, because I have to find someone who's going to help that work. And so it changed. It was a very interesting time too with coaches, because I let go of one that was helping me open, like with all those systems. And then I transitioned to another one that was saying, we can probably do this, but it's just not going to look normal. So, but God is good. Like he provided, what I needed when I needed it. There was a doctor just happened to be wanting to try out NUCA down in Des Moines, and she was taking the elective class. She was in active practice with other things. And so she would hop in the car with me and we'd go to the elective together and, talk road trip style. And she's like, can I do this on Monday? Like after the elective class? I'm like, no, I'm sorry. It's probably not gonna, you need more time. But if you want to come and I will teach you to in person, will you help me during maternity leave? And so that's how it worked for us. So she was also a mom in practice. And so she would come up. I think she gave me like a day, maybe 2 a week. And at that time, it wasn't a huge practice. So it kept things afloat.
Right.
But then I brought my babies with me to the office. And that's where my practice really, it was unique enough with NUCA. But it was even more unique that I usually had a baby in the back office for probably the good first on and off 10 years of my practice.
Yeah. Yeah. Four kids, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I always like to let our women doctors know that it's possible. It's not always pretty. It's not always the way you envisioned things, but like for me, I had certain priorities that were important to me. And then there were certain things that I was willing to let go of. And in hindsight, at the time, I might've been more stressed about some of that, but in hindsight, it's like, no, I was in that season and that's where I needed to be. So if you have a more established practice and you have associates and things, then that's awesome to get your systems in place that you can take time off and support each other for maternity leaves and things like that, which is really awesome if you can work out that system. I was in a situation where I didn't have the volume to bring in an associate.
Right.
So my priorities at that time, honestly, it was breastfeeding. Like my family didn't have a lot of success. I have 5 sisters and there wasn't a lot of success with breastfeeding in my family. And so I really wanted that. So that's why I'm like, I got to figure out a way to bring my babies with me.
Right.
And again, God's providence brought me this receptionist who, in the interview, I had my son on my lap and I was like, this is part of the gig. This is going to be part of the job. And she was willing to take that on and she did awesome. So we just had it where when I had the baby, when I came back, then we would just do a limited schedule. I do hour on, hour off until we got the breastfeeding schedule down, until the baby we got that schedule kind of figured out. Baby called the shots. Yeah. And then once that was all kind of in place, then we started filling in the schedule more around that time. Patients knew what was going on.
Right.
They loved it.
Yeah.
I had very little pushback. Even now, like I have patients that are still with me that started during that time, and they always ask about that particular baby that was there. Now my daughter, she's 18. She's been working the front desk this summer. And there's a bunch of patients that were like, oh my gosh, I read you books in the waiting room.
That's awesome.
It's so good. It's so good. Yeah. It turned out really good. But what I was willing to kind of give up to make that happen is my growth was slower during that time.
Sure.
I went to 3 days a week instead of 5. And there were some times, especially as an instructor, where you see your students get into practice and then they start like taking off. And it was like, okay, you are growing really fast and I'm happy for you, but why am I not, but what I gained and I wouldn't do it different. Like looking back, I was the way I wanted it to be. Now, not every woman is like that, and that's absolutely fine. But what I just want to encourage any doctor, but especially our women out there, is that it's okay to want it all, but just be clear about what you're willing to sacrifice and what's priorities for you.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a really good point, right? Because there's only so much time, right? You can't do you literally can't do everything all the time, right? Like it's just not possible. So you
Right.
have to prioritize things. You have to, and like you said too, there's going to be different seasons. There's going to be different times where one thing can become a higher priority than something else. Like, yeah, having a realistic picture of that is really important, right? And so
Yeah.
I wanted to go back to what you were talking about with Dr. Dickholt Sr. and your experience there with being an associate and learning from a high standards environment, right? An environment that really challenged you and pushed you, and maybe wasn't always the kindest way of delivering the message, right? And I know from personal experience too. I was in classes with Dr. Dickholt Sr. and I knew how he was and that type of thing. And I had other great instructors who had a similar type of personality or maybe a little bit of abrasiveness, but like Dr. Alberti and others that are like that, right? So but I'd like to talk a little bit about that, because I don't know if sometimes maybe students or associates or whatnot don't understand the why. Like, why are doctors like that? Some doctors like that. Dr. Dickholt Sr., Dr. Berti, other doctors, why do they have that drive within them? What is the, what is that is driving them to be like that?
Mm-hmm. So I can't answer that for him.
Yeah.
I know it existed, and I know it was always a driving force within the practice. And as an employee, it was an expectation.
Mm.
So the thing with Dr. Dickholt is when he was with patients, again, it wasn't the warm, cuddly. There were definitely times where, because my job was, I'd be in the room with him when he'd be seeing patients as an associate. And because I was learning, so he would do the thermal scan, and then he would, he'd always start with the leg check and thermal scan, and then the anatometer. And then if they needed an adjustment, he'd have me set them up on the headpiece, and then he'd check it. Okay. And then I would take them after he did the leg check. Then I'd take them and I'd do the final anatometer reading, because I was in a little different room. And then he would see the next patient. And so in the room where I was doing that final anatometer check, then there were times where, like, he offended somebody, and they'd be like, "What the heck? Like, what is that about?" And I'm like, "Look, that's just how he is. I'm sorry you had that experience, but he really does care about you, like it." So the thing with him though is, when you see those post x-rays, there's this like competitiveness about it in a way. It kind of touches on that chord where you really want it to look awesome. You really want to have that post x-ray look fantastic. And he was definitely about that. But it was because, like, he was dead honest with people. He was, like, almost to a fault. If they were not protecting their adjustment, they would hear it. They would know they did something wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
But it all was rooted in the fact that he wanted to help these people. And I think when you see miracles happen, and they're not all miracles, but when you see some, it catches you. It like gets you so excited about seeing it again and knowing the potential. You also know what like a partial, not a maximal correction is missing. You
Mm.
know, so I think that's where the passion comes in, is you see miracles happen. You see a post x-ray, so you know what happened. You see, you have an experience if you're someone like Dr. Birdie and like Dr. Dick Holtz and all the other incredible NUCA doctors we have out there that just, they know their biomechanics, they know how to reduce a subluxation. Like there's this drive, like we want that maximal correction because that can change this person's life.
Right.
And it has to come from that place. Of course, egos can play a part in this, good or bad. But honestly, I think his patients, they stuck with him because they knew he would work his butt off to get them corrected, even if they were a little offended along the way.
Right. Yeah. So I'd love to know, like, so, I mean, obviously you had that experience, right? And so now you're in your own practice and, you know, obviously as the kids get older and you have more time to kind of focus in on the practice, eventually you do have associates. You have an associate today that I believe is a good place you are with your associate, Dr. Lee, right? And so talk about, like, so, you know, you had that experience of being trained in that way. And I mean, you're a very different person than Dr. Dick Holtz Sr. So how has some of those things that he taught you, or the way he taught you, how has that impacted how you teach others?
Yeah. Well, everything I teach, I feel like comes from him. I feel like when I teach a class, it's like, well, so Dr. Dick Holtz would say it this way, you know, because he had such a beautiful knowledge of the work and my biomechanics and things like that. Keeping the standard high, and I feel like I could do a better job of that too, just like checking in with my associate. He's doing great work, but part of our KRAs and KPIs that you guys have helped us with, part of that for our practice is, are you pursuing certification? So it's part of the system. It's part of the expectation of an associate that you continue to improve your skills. I also have in my employment contracts, and I had this for a long time, that it's required that they attend at least one NUCA conference a year. I know some associates I've heard where they don't get to go because the doctor wants to go and they need to cover the practice. Well, so there it goes with the priority and what you're willing to sacrifice. I prioritize the conferences because that's just key in their growth as a doctor, because they're not going to end with me. Maybe that'd be awesome, but like the odds are good that they're not going to stay here forever. But my job is to give them the tools to have a successful practice when they leave and to do really good work, because they're going to tell people they worked here, you know, so they, but they have to give good care. And when I'm gone, so that's the other piece to having an associate, right? Is creating freedom from your practice. You want to create a business. You don't want to create a job. Right. So, so when I leave, I want to make sure that my patients are getting the quality of care that they get when I'm there. And I also want it to be a situation where most patients, and it won't be all, but most are fine seeing the other doctor if I'm not here. Like, it's not a big deal. It's seamless. So that's really important. And if you don't have systems in place to keep their skill set high or even better, I mean, wouldn't that be great? Right. I think you're doing a disservice to your patients and to that doctor. So that's part of our thing. Like it's part of the contract. They got to go to a conference, and we shut down, you know? So yeah, do I lose money? Sure, I do. Yeah. But is it worth it? 100% it's worth it. You know? Right. We try to, I try to incentivize the fees to go to the conference, use that as an incentive for growth and things like that. There's a lot of ways to make it work for your practice. So
Yeah.
But yeah, so with Dr. Dickholtz, that was something that, because he would sometimes take care of my patients if I was gone, and if they weren't holding well, I heard about it. So, yeah, I mean, just having that as a culture. Now, almost to a fault, like I couldn't do anything else but NUCA, and that was good. But like one time he saw me with an activator and he's like, "You get that thing out of my office or you're out too." It was, yeah,
Right.
it was pretty strict. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was good, honestly. Like looking back, at first I was like, well, kind of miffed about it, but it's like,
Yeah.
no, it's his practice. This is what we do here. It's okay, you know. But
Yeah.
yeah, it just having that as a standard as part of the culture is really important.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like, I mean, the pursuit of excellence definitely is something that you got from him and you continue on in your practice, and that keeping that level of care high and all that type of thing. And so, I mean, but, maybe you're a little bit nicer to your associates than he was
I
to
don't know.
you.
You may want to ask Dr. Lee about that. I can put on a mom voice pretty fast.
Yeah. So, but, I'd like to talk more about that. I mean, obviously, having associates it's not easy, right? It's not like an easy thing. You can't just it's not the kind of thing where you just, hey, I'm gonna hire an associate today and it's just gonna go perfect, right? Like there's a skill set that you have to develop to be good with associates, like how to train them, how to hold them accountable, how to set proper expectations, like all these things, right? That you don't necessarily know unless you've done it, right? Unless you have been taught how to do these things, right? So talk about your journey with associates and what it's been
Yeah.
like for you and where you are now.
Yeah. So that that has not been a strength for me. I have learned the hard way. And I do have some remorse with some of my associates that it could have been better. But you do the best you can with the tools that you got,
Yeah, sure.
So I was, early in practice with babies. And so the first two that Dr. I mentioned before helped me. And then by the time I had my third child, I was starting to do some work with schools, bringing in preceptors. And I worked out an arrangement with another doctor to have as an independent contractor. And the expectation was that he would build his practice just alongside mine, but he'd be in charge of all of his practice. He would keep everything that he made. He'd pay me rent. We'd share some overhead expenses, the things that we share. It'd be a set. He'd know what it was every month. I knew what it was every month. And then I paid him a wage to help take x-rays if I needed that. And then also we worked out an arrangement for when I would go on maternity leave. And so that worked for me for my last two babies. So I had him for a couple years, and then I had a different independent contractor after him for about 4 years. Both good experiences. Again, it's not the income producing that an associate would to the doctor, but they had a lot of autonomy in their practice. There was an expectation you would do NUCA, and you'd be good at it.
Right.
But beyond that, like how they marketed themselves, that was all on them, and managing their hours, managing all of that was all on them. So, it worked out well for those times. And then, I brought in a couple associates, and with varying successes. What I found, unfortunately, chiropractors have a reputation of eating their own a lot of times. And I started with contracts that were not great for the associate.
Mm.
And they were fine, they were fair, but there wasn't a lot of incentive to grow, not the way I wanted it to be, but it
Right.
was what I had. It was the tools I had in front of me.
Right.
And so, if you have a situation like that, there's no incentive to stay.
Mm.
So I wasn't getting healthy relationships with my associates for quite a while. Dr. Lee came to me. I wasn't looking for somebody. And again, I was teaching. And so I had, I was in front of a lot of students. And so it was a different relationship right away for that. But then also working through our contract and making sure that growth was incentivized, making sure that, he felt empowered to grow, and that was recognized, that again, making sure that his clinical excellence was a priority, and yeah, just trying to have a respectful, mutual growth, win-win type situation.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's.
No,
I don't want to give away a ton of details just because I don't think that's fair to his privacy either. But
yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. But it's great. It's great that you've been able to, learn from the things you've done before, and hopefully we've helped you and gotten you into a better place with where you are with your associate. And so it's, at this point, it's like you said, it's a healthy relationship, maybe the healthiest associate relationship you've ever had. And
that's fair to say.
And that makes it makes a huge difference to the health of the practice, really, right? I mean, it impacts that. It's such an important relationship that impacts every patient, impacts every team member, right? It ultimately impacts your community. And so that's awesome that you're there at this point with Dr. Lee.
I'm grateful for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, before we wrap up today, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of your podcasts talk about the importance of systems, and that's really key with any associate position, but also any practice. So having clear-cut systems, having a clear vision for what you want, creating a culture that you want, and then just loving your patients, just really the genuine care for them. You don't have to tell them you care about them. They're going to feel it. It'll translate into, the quality of work you're doing. If you just are genuinely concerned about their well-being, it translates into the recommendations you give them. You should never be giving a recommendation that's good for your bank account or that's good. I mean, it's nice when the two go together, but that shouldn't be the main reason. You shouldn't be giving recommendations based on your relationship with money. So I had plenty of times where it was like, oh, who could afford this? If I do this care plan, who could afford this?
Right.
And it's not about that. It's about what they need. You recommend what they need.
That's right.
Not more than, not less than.
Yeah.
And you tell them what that costs. You put your fees at a spot that is reasonable, that you feel that you are being compensated correctly for, and you present it like you would say, this dozen eggs costs $8.
Yeah. Right.
Like that's, and if you are coming from a place of just genuine, this is what you need, this is how I can help you, or what I will do to try to help you, they feel that and they will trust you. I love my practice. I love that I have people that have known my children since they're infants. I love that I have patients that are all ranges of ages and that they continue to come in, knowing that we care, So I just would encourage, because just getting right with your own heart. Like where are you? Where are you with why you're in practice? And it can be hard when you've got bills that are coming in and you don't know how you're going to pay them. It's hard to get there sometimes, but just to tune in and say, like, this is why I'm doing it. I love these people and I'm going to do what I can to help them. You'll grow.
Yeah. Yeah.
They'll be healthy.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Dr. Barbara Reed. Love having you on the podcast. This is so much fun to finally have you on. And we appreciate you, appreciate what you're doing for your community and all the hard work that you've done to teach students, teach so many doctors and everything that you've done. So appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Doc. And as we always say on this podcast, go team upper cervical.